So our customers can order from one manufacturer and know that it may come from multiple US facilities, or it may even come from an overseas facility, but they're not having to go out there and make half a dozen phone calls to fill their orders. They can make one call to Pack and can better fulfill those orders than we ever had in the history of Pack.
Welcome to episode 7 of Let's Talk Packaging. I'm your host, Donald Anderson, here today with another great episode talking about our flexibility in the market to offer different products from different locations and really allow our customers to take advantage of our strengths and flexibility. Our guest today is Lance Fletcher, and Lance is a 25-year plus employee of Pack Worldwide and has really covered so many different parts of the company and seen different facets of what we do and what we do well. You'll hear all about that here in just a moment, but I just want to thank you for all your time spent with us this season. Thanks for joining us. Right now, we'll take you straight into my conversation with Lance. Lance, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you on. You were someone that we targeted early on as you transitioned into your new role here at Pack. Not that you're new at Pack, but your new role at Pack. And so,
I've had a few of them.
Yeah, you've had a few of them. Well, why don't you fill us in a little bit? Can you tell us about your pre-Pack days? Because those are pretty interesting, and I'm sure as they set you up for your time at Pack. And then what have you been up to at Pack over the last just a few years?
Wow, my pre-Pack days go back a couple decades now. I was in the Air Force, joined as a crew chief. So I worked on F-111 fighter jets for a few years and then got a degree in industrial engineering and got a commission as a logistics officer. So did a lot of combat readiness planning. And it was an eye-opener to see what we did as a country to prepare for war. So from there, well, I met going way back. I met Phil in Austria when he was overseeing his brother. So Phil is the chairman and founder of Pack. And when I got out of the service, I reached out to him. And in 96, 95, Pack hired me in operations when we weren't even manufacturers.
Sure.
So this was long before that. From there, I went to Mexico, started the company down there, Pack Mexico, where we do all of our converting for paperboard, and now our poly lamination plant, and oversaw quality, did that for a few years, and then got into sales and then account management. And from there, oversaw contract packaging and business development, and now international sales. So it's come full circle.
I know you're back in old territory, I guess, in some way.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've seen a breadth of different facets of what we do. You've seen us go from essentially a packaging broker to big manufacturer. I mean, we're our footprint's growing significantly, and I think that's really what we wanted. The heart of what we want to talk about today is this footprint that keeps growing for Pack, not just domestically. As we talk here today, officially last week, I think it became public news that the plant in Atlanta is opening later this year. As we grow our footprint here domestically, Phoenix, Atlanta now, Cincinnati, and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. International is growing too, so would love to talk about that. You mentioned Mexico. Why don't we start there? Can you tell us a little bit about how Mexico came about? You were there right at the start.
Well, as we transitioned, as you say, from a broker, and just to touch on that, it has been an amazing journey to watch Pack grow as a company. And I know that at the heart of that is the culture we all love, being part of the Pack culture, and the leadership has really been deliberate about keeping that through the growth. And so I think it's an important aspect of who we are today. And certainly from where we started, which, as we were talking, I went down there to manage a maquiladora contract because we had realized that to really, step out to be the company that Phil had envisioned, we needed to get outside of just buying and selling packaging. So we were controlling our manufacturing through maquiladora is the way that started. And we did that for about 6 months and then realized that, you know, we needed to achieve better control of our destiny. And that
Mm,
meant manufacturing ourselves
sure.
rather than contracting someone else to manufacture. So it was not more than about 4 months into that journey that Phil said, "Hey, let's look at starting our own facility." And I, I quickly learned more about international business and business law and NAFTA at that point
Yeah.
than I ever wanted to be honest with you. But so we leased a building and moved equipment and started rebuilding some of the equipment that we currently are using now to manufacture the paperboard. And our primary target for the products that we produced was air courier. We
Mm.
really were all about air courier market. Back then, it was airborne, DHL, UPS, and now it's branched out from there certainly.
When the mail jacket or paperboard mailer was the primary, now known as the mail jacket, um,
Correct.
was the primary creation there. What went behind choosing to start with that, choosing to start there as opposed to some of the other types of packaging that we were brokering at the time?
That's the one that we found a partner in Ponderosa, which it's funny. We talk about sustainability. That's the big buzzword. But even back then, we were focused on, hey, how do we as a company support our environment and our future, our children's future? And through Ponderosa, they have 100% recycled paperboard, which was really rare
Mm.
back then. And not only that, it was, and I think still is, 97% post-consumer. So
Wow.
they were taking, newspaper, they were taking corrugated boxes, they were taking checks to watch this sort center in San Juan del Rio, where our plant is, was really amazing because a lot of their paper source was freight trained in from the US and other countries. So we were producing 100% recycled board um, in our plant there. And that's really the reason uh, for that locale and starting that product above the other ones that we currently produce. Now, it wasn't shortly after that Middletown, or actually Lebanon,
Hmm.
started in the plastics. So it was kind of a 1-2 within a few months of each other. But
Sure.
the reason San Juan was chosen was because of our partnership with the plant in San Juan del Rio, Ponderosa.
When you and by you I mean Pack as the company chose
Sure.
to take things into Mexico. Why was that the choice at the time compared to you choosing to go domestic for your making our air jackets, our poly bubble mailers in Cincinnati, Lebanon? Why take that international but keep the plastics here domestic?
It was really about the paper source at that time, and to find a recycled paperboard that we felt good about producing and putting into the market. Ponderosa offered us, I think, the ideal solution where we felt that NAFTA was coming on board, and so looking at this from not only an environmental but a business standpoint made a lot of sense to move our equipment as we purchased it down into Mexico
Mm,
so that we could take advantage of the paperboard facility there. I don't think that there was a lot of availability of 100% recycled paperboard in the US, at least from what we were purchasing before as a broker.
sure.
It wasn't there.
So fast forward 20 plus years now since we opened that plant. Let's talk about what we're doing down there now. I mean, the growth has been significant, especially in the last 5 years down in what has been the original plant in Mexico, but then also added another location, not too far away from the original location. Can you kind of walk us through what are we doing down there now? What new offerings are we taking, whether they be new to the company as a whole or moving some of what we've done domestically to that plant because we've found out that do that well down there.
Putting a plant in Mexico, the manufacturing culture footprints are normally much different than what we find in the US. And so to have a plant down there that has the advantages of the material sources and the labor with a US mindset is pretty rare.
Mm.
And so as we established ourselves as a manufacturer, it was easy to find a really good labor force
Mm.
because of our culture and our mindset as manufacturers in that country. And so as we did that, we found that we had built a team that had some really unique expertise. And so as we looked at moving our business from brokered to manufactured and looking at the expertise that we had down there, it was a pretty easy transition to move from converting paperboard to printing and converting paperboard.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there to printing poly and converting poly. And as the market grew for our PJs, our flat poly jackets, it made sense to establish a manufacturing footprint there with the team that we had built in Mexico. And to speak about the other plant that we have down there now. Yeah. So it was probably 4 years ago now. Man, time flies.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
That we said, hey, there's a market out there that we're not involved in. And it's, pouches, and more companies are looking at pouches versus a rigid container.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought, hey, that is an adjacent to what we do. So let's get involved in Sierra Liggett, who I think you had an interview here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Manages that specialty packaging division. And so when that started, we looked at overseas. So a lot of our partnerships and development of that business was out of China, which was great at a starting point. But again, looking at controlling our own destiny and how to build a future that grows within our culture, we have slowly moved that business to the plant in Mexico. And that was a decision that Jim, our CEO, made as far as expanding that product division, and found a really good fit in a plant that's not far from San Juan del Rio. In fact, just outside of Querétaro there. And we are doing laminated films and pouches and printing. And so it is, one more step in the evolution of who we are as PAC.
Yeah. So nowadays we are making mail jackets, poly jackets, pouches, both stock and custom of all those things. So Mexico for us is not really a small location anymore. They really do quite a bit of the percentage of what our distribution takes and uses day in and day out really comes from south of the border.
The only thing that they don't do is bubble, and that's an altitude issue.
Oh,
because
really?
as you make bubble, because San Juan del Rio in Mexico, where they're located, is almost a mile. So certainly well above sea level, a mile in altitude. And if you produce bubble at a mile in altitude and then bring it down to sea level, because of the atmospheric pressure difference, it will deflate at sea level. So
I never knew that.
And that's the reason that we don't do that. But everything else, you're right. We're doing the flat poly printing, we're doing the lamination films, we're doing the paperboard, and we're also doing contract fulfillment there
Mm,
for one of our major customers. So we do everything except for the bubble there. And they've expanded their footprint. When I first leased that original build, we've added 3 buildings onto that original one
mm.
in San Juan, and then we've purchased a fourth, I guess, building, as you could say, outside of Querétaro.
Wow. So why is this significant for them? Why is our relationship south of the United States, but not overseas? Why is that significant benefit for them? So that's part one of what I wanted to ask you. And then part two, how do they approach selling, using it to their benefit as a tool in their toolbox?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. You know, the overseas connection, a lot of people, obviously other companies use that, and we started out doing that as well. But there are challenges. There are, logistics challenges, time frame challenges, lead times, even cultural challenges.
Hmm.
So as we found those to be more significant, and given that our management team, manufacturing teams in Mexico had the manufacturing breadth to expand into more poly and laminated films, etc. We made the decision to do that, which that it's under pack is
Hmm.
certainly a huge advantage. That it's not a partner
Right.
that we have in China. That you know, par- companies use that term pretty loosely.
Mm,
If I buy from somebody, it's my partner. This is actually part of pack, which is really, really a significant difference. And the other aspect is the lead times.
mm,
They're about half the lead times, and our ability to do really just as high a graphics that you can get from overseas, and the lamination of the products that we can do there now that we've outfitted that plant with some really high tech equipment from a manufacturing standpoint makes that a huge advantage than going overseas. Because if you order a container from China, if you're a broker buying that and then reselling it, you're paying for at least half of that before it leaves the water.
hmm.
And there's no guarantee of what you're going to get when it lands.
Sure.
So if there's ever a quality issue, the management of that situation and then the lead time to get it replaced is pretty significant.
Yeah. So, Lance, I want to get into our other counterpart across the world. Speaking of overseas, and I want to talk about Malaysia. We here locally at PAC, talk about we call it Malaysia, we call it KL for Kuala Lumpur. Uh, you know, there's a few different terms that we use internally, but locations Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and they are just like Mexico, as you described a few minutes ago, they're a pack company, a pack employees. They are your and my coworkers, and what a weapon for us in our toolbox as a company to have them as a resource. Um, will you talk a little bit, similarly to what we talked about with Mexico about, how did we enter that market, and what are we doing over there to support domestic sales?
Absolutely. It's not completely different rationale to open that market over there. When we were having a crisis in the US in resin, but the resin manufacturers were having difficulty with a consistent supply, and so there was even force majeure that we had went through, which really escalates the prices to us and of course to our customers, but also just the consistency of supply. And with that, we had done investigation of overseas, and we looked at quite a few different countries that had less of volatility in the resin market. And we settled on KL, as you say, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Hmm.
For really, the choice to go over there was just to mitigate what we were seeing in the US as far as a resin supply. because, if we can't get resin, we can't supply our products to our customers. And
Sure.
so that was becoming a really, a real issue for our customers. And we felt that one, it gave us a consistent platform for manufacturing, consistent platform for a raw material supply source, but also gave us an opportunity to look at other countries besides the US and Asia, Australia, UK
Hmm.
to supply products in those countries from our plant in Malaysia. And it turned out to be quite fortuitous because the resin market continued in its instability for some time after we opened the Malaysia plant, and we were able to mitigate that mainly for our US customers, but more recently for other countries besides the US, including Pan Asia,
Hmm.
America.
It's another example of control your destiny. I mean, that seems to be the recurring theme here when it comes to these international locations for us.
Exactly. It's funny because that first step on that journey, if you will,
Hmm.
was Phil Boshaw uh, as a distributor to a manufacturer. In fact, it was quite interesting. The conversation I remember vividly was in the Redmond office, and Phil kind of took stock of where we were as a distributor, and his question was, how do we feel about manufacturing in Mexico?
Mm.
And from that question started that journey. And uh, Jim has taken that mantle, if you will, from Phil, and done the same with expanding Mexico into another plant, another manufacturing footprint, and then with Malaysia and expanding Malaysia because
Hmm.
we have two plants in Malaysia now. So we continue to not only step through that process, but further our journey down that path.
Take me through a little overview. What are we doing now in Malaysia? Historically, our Malaysia partnership has been focused on poly mailers. But can you walk me through, beyond poly mailers? What are we offering out of Malaysia from our stock offerings and custom? What can we do over there?
I am excited and happy to announce that we have expanded the manufacturing footprint over there to include air jackets, which are
Awesome.
bubble polymailers. And we just did that, um, opened that line, if you will, up at the end of last year. So that's a really exciting opportunity, not only to provide the roll stocks for our air jacket systems, but also to provide, as you say, custom and stock air jackets of multiple sizes. In fact, that's one of our big campaigns that we're rolling out. In fact, this week we're sending out
Sure.
air jacket samples and introductory cards along with some hand sanitizer and why not given the environment that we're
Hmm.
in, but it just to show that our air jackets are a perfect opportunity to ship things that historically people think about in boxes. And in fact, we're pretty excited about that opportunity because in the Asian market, there really isn't an air jacket solution. It's all about boxes.
Mm.
With the boxes come void fill and um, you know the labor to pack a box, to seal it up, put the void fill in there. So there's a lot of advantages that our air jackets can offer the Asian market that the US market has enjoyed for decades. In
Sure.
fact, that same air jacket has proven itself time and time again in e-commerce and air courier, honestly, for the last 45 years. So
Sure.
it's nothing, it's not a product that's new to us. It's not a product that's been unproven, but it's a product that we get to introduce into the Asian market. And we're really excited about that future.
And correct me, but I'm guessing that the plan is not only to introduce that into the Southeast Asia market, but also to, alleviate production strain here on in our domestic locations, right?
Yeah, you know, a lot of things that happened last year. We think about the environment and the COVID and the quarantine, but what also came about that is people. looking to the internet
Mm.
for ordering the stuff that they would normally go to a store for. So in doing that, it put a strain on all the U.S. manufacturing
Mm.
uh, to keep up with the packaging to support that, and also the e-commerce companies. And so we were like other companies, really looking at everything we could do to optimize our output
Mm.
and get really creative with manufacturing and substrates. And so, as you say, as that market continues to grow, and it will, this gives us a lot of opportunity to support the constraint that we all felt last year.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's a timely change.
Absolutely. And not only that, the machine that we launched last year for the air jackets, we also have converting lines that are coming in this year that will help support that. So it's not only the creation of the substrates where the bubbles applied to the substrate of poly, but it's also as well as the converting of the bags. And so we're adding more capacity in the KL market as well as the US markets.
We should see a ripple effect, I guess, as we continue to expand there.
Hmm.
To put very, very similar question that I did at the end of our conversation about Mexico a little bit ago, why does this matter for our U.S. customers, uh, and how can they take advantage of that in their day to day?
Well, I think for our customers in the U.S., where last year we were making difficult calls about, hey, you want you know 50,000, we can provide 20,000 now, and you'll have to reorder the balance just because everybody was on allocations given the demand for that product. So instead of that call, we can make a call that, hey, we can provide 20,000 from our US plants and we'll supplement from our overseas plants. And so we've got a crack logistics team that has worked out some phenomenal contracts to secure freight from overseas. And so even though there may be a week or two difference in the transportation of those products, they're still coming from a pack facility. They still have the same quality systems, the same recipes of film, the exact same care of manufacturing that you will get from our Pack US facilities. So our customers can order from one manufacturer and know that it may come from multiple US facilities, or it may even come from an overseas facility that we manage, but they're not having to go out there and make a half a dozen phone calls to fill their orders. They can make one call to pack, and we internally, with the expanded footprint, and as you even said, our new plant in Atlanta can better fulfill those orders than we ever had in the history of pack.
One order may come from different locations, but it's going to be the same quality, the same oversight, the same company. Really, flexibility is becoming a significant strength.
Absolutely. And it's funny, years ago, I was sitting in a meeting with one of our customers and they asked, what do you feel is your core competence, core strength? Hey, there's a lot of things we do really well when it comes to manufacturing products. The strength of our side sills, the formulation of our films, all of the attributes of that, dart, tear, elongation, all of that. We do really, really well. But it hit me that our core competence is our service.
Mm.
And so when we talk about having our customers place one call and being able to satisfy that order from multiple facilities, they get that same world class service that really, I think, is our core strength as a company.
What a great place to end. I mean, you summarized up, I think, better than I could the previous episode. Lance, any last words you want to say before we wrap up? Thanks for coming on. I loved having you here and talking through, the diversity of our strengths as a company and how that applies for our customers. Anything else you want to say before we wrap things up here?
Having spent the last 25 years
Hmm.
watching Pack become the company it has, and the privilege that I've had to work in the multiple roles, there's probably not a better phrase than the one we have is, Pack strong and Pack proud. And it's not a boastful pride. It's really an understanding of the care we have for our environment, our customers, and our employees. And
Mm.
so it really is a privilege to be part of the pack team, having watched us grow as a company. So
Lance, thanks for joining us, and look forward to having you
absolutely.
on here again sometime soon.
I look forward to it as well. Thanks, Donald.
That'll be it for us on episode 7 of Let's Talk Packaging. Thanks again to Lance Fletcher for filling us in on how both Pack Worldwide and our customers can control our own destiny with the flexibility that we can give you on your packaging. You can find us for questions and comments at pacpack.com or searching for us on social media platforms. Pack Worldwide is the premium manufacturer of protective mailers and specialty packaging solutions for the courier, e-commerce, fulfillment, and distribution markets. Thanks for listening with us, and we'll be back soon.